Okay, so we're ready for Sunday, the 15th guidepost in our pilgrimage together. This past week, there were a couple of themes that came up. We're going to try and touch on both of them. Maybe we're at a fork in the road. Maybe we're going to take two paths here. One of them had to do with the sources for our decision making about things like, do we wear masks? How do we relate to each other as pilgrims on this journey? What are the sources for our decision making? The other one had to do with where it is that we're going to end up, and the acknowledgement that for all of us, this pathway, this journey is going to take us to our own death. At some point, we're going to die. Now, we live in a culture that pretty much tries to hide from us the fact that we are going to die. It's not something we talk about in polite company, but to the degree to which we experience the imminence of our own death, even perhaps potentially fatal illness or a near-death experience, it really changes the way we live in the moment today. So that's one of the things that we're kind of exploring, is how does that knowledge of this particular endpoint inform how we are on the journey? But to go back for a moment to the whole question of what are the sources for how we make our decisions, our ethical decisions. One of the things we were clear about is that we will make choices based upon the scope of information that is available to us. And one of the things that can happen is that suddenly we realize, oh, there's this other information too. And the scope of the data that we are able to take in to kind of incorporate into our decision making, as that expands, we may come to a new perspective. The hedge on that is that there is this thing that we call confirmation bias. I have a way of thinking about things that I'm kind of attached to. Typically, I'm attached emotionally to it. For some reason in my life, this is really important to me. Maybe it has to do with wounds that I've experienced as a child. And so I'm only going to take into account that data which confirms the bias that I already have. And so we have confirmation bias that's narrowing the scope of our attention, and we have these new discoveries that expand it. And somewhere in between there, we're going to be making decisions about what do we think is the appropriate way for us to show up in our lives around any number of things. But there's a third thing, and this is an issue that we have touched on before, but it comes up again in the context of how do we make ethical decisions. And that has to do with the degree to which we experience the world as a place which is safe for us. This is what Erickson refers to as basic trust or mistrust. And this is the earliest stage of human development. To what degree are we in a world that we expect is going to have our best interests at heart? And when it has not, it's difficult for us to have a kind of basic form of trust. And thus that is one of the things that's really going to inform how it is we're going to choose to be in our relationships with others. So these two themes, the movement towards an endpoint, which is going to be our own death, how does that shape us? And as we're traveling along this road together, to what degree do we have a sense of trust of others who are maybe unseen, lurking in the weeds around us as we're on this journey? How does that inform how we see ourselves in the world in relationships to others? All right. Hope you can join us this Sunday.